The Killer Is His Granddaughter. In the Netflix thriller In the Shadow of the Moon, a Philadelphia patrol officer named Thomas Lockhart first crosses paths with the strange killer in 1988, and she keeps coming back every 9 years without aging a single day. She reappears in 1997, again in 2006, and again in 2015. Always the same woman, always the same age. For decades, Lockhart is certain he's hunting an impossible serial murderer. He's not. Her name is Raya, and she's his own granddaughter, traveling backward from the year 2042. In her timeline, a hate-driven movement drags America into a second civil war, and she's been sent back to kill its future leaders before they can light the fuse, one 9-year jump at a time. Because she moves in reverse, she meets her own grandfather in the wrong order, young to old, while he ages forward, chasing what he thinks is a ghost. She finally proves it by showing him the bracelet he once gave his daughter, Raya's mother. And the cruelest part is buried in that very first encounter. Because in 1988, Lockhart accidentally kills her, which means he killed his own granddaughter before she was ever born. The obsession costs him his marriage, his career, and most of his life. The last shot is Lockhart finally holding his infant granddaughter, choosing the future he can still have instead of the past he spent 40 years trying to fix. The hero sent his father. In James Cameron's The Terminator, the leader of the future human resistance, John Connor, personally picks the one soldier he'll send back through time to protect his mother, and that soldier ends up becoming his father. The machines send a Terminator to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor before John can be born. John counters by sending Kyle Reese to guard her, and across those few desperate days, Reese and Sarah fall together and conceive John. It's a perfect closed loop. John can't exist unless Reese is sent back, and Reese is only ever sent because John exists. So there's no original version of events where anyone else was the father. Cameron made the film for around $6 million, with producer Gail Ann Hurd, his first real feature as a director, and it pulled in over $38 million. Reese dies in that 1984 protecting Sarah, never once suspecting she's carrying the son who gave him his orders. He spends the whole film insisting he crossed time out of love for a single worn photograph of her, never learning that the boy who handed him that photo was the child he was about to father. Surveillance was a time window. In Tony Scott's Deja Vu, ATF agent Doug Carlin, played by Denzel Washington, is handed a secret government program called Snow White that seems to replay a New Orleans ferry bombing from exactly 4 days earlier. His team walks him through it as cutting-edge surveillance, footage stitched together from satellites and cameras, showing the days leading up to the attack in flawless detail. Here's where it gets strange. It isn't a recording. The screen is a literal window punched 4 days into the actual past, and that past is unfolding in real time as they watch it. Once they understand that, everything changes, because a window you can see through is a window you can reach through. First they send a note back, then they send a living person. Carlin crosses over himself to stop the bombing before it happens, and to save a woman named Claire. And that 4-day gap turns out to be a hard physical limit of the machine, not a matter of storage. The Carlin the audience followed for the entire film drowns in the past, planting that warning. The man who walks away at the end is a second Carlin who never lived through any of it. You blow yourself free. In Palm Springs, the only way out of the time loop is to strap explosives to your body and set them off inside a glowing cave. Andy Samberg's character, Niles, has been reliving the same wedding day so long he's lost all count, and the loop resets every time he stumbles back into that cave. Kristen Miliotti's Sarah refuses to accept it. She teaches herself real theoretical physics, works out that a precisely timed blast at the exact moment of the reset might shatter the cycle, and talks him into blowing themselves up together. It works. The film cuts to the two of them lounging in a drained pool, the day finally, mercifully over. Samberg has said the ending is left open on purpose, so that pool might be freedom, or another dimension, or something quieter. And the movie flatly refuses to tell you which. Dad answers from the past. In Frequency, a grieving detective switches on his dead father's old ham radio and hears the man himself, alive, 30 years in the past, the night before the fire that killed him. A freak surge of aurora borealis activity is bending the radio signal across those 3 decades, letting John Sullivan talk to his father Frank in real time. John warns him about the 1969 warehouse blaze. Frank survives, and the timeline rewrites itself. Then it backfires. In the changed timeline, a serial killer called the Nightingale now lives longer and murders more people, including John's own mother. So father and son have to hunt a killer together, as a team split across 30 years, cleaning up the disaster their reunion accidentally created. Changes Frank makes in the past ripple into John's present as he lives them, new memories surfacing in his head mid-scene. In the rewritten timeline, Frank lives all the way to old age and joins the final fight in the present, which means one phone call across time gave John back the father he had already buried. By the way, if you're enjoying these, I put out videos like this all the time, and a subscribe would genuinely help the channel. Thanks. You can't trust the narrator. In Primer, two engineers accidentally build a working time machine in a garage, and by the end there are so many copies of them doubling back through their own days that the film stops telling you which version is even speaking. Shane Carruth wrote it, directed it, produced it, edited it, scored it, and starred in it, all for about $7,000 over 3 years, and it won the Sundance Grand Jury Prize and the Alfred P. Sloan Prize in 2004. The machine has one strict rule. To travel back a day, you have to sit sealed inside the box for roughly that same day. So a traveler and his earlier self end up overlapping for hours, both walking around the same town. Then it escalates. Aaron secretly builds a failsafe box, then a second box that lets him loop back to before he ever told Abe about the machine at all, spawning recursive versions of himself the earlier versions don't even know exist. The two friends stop being partners and start quietly waging a war over who controls the timeline. By the final act, the Aaron narrating the film might be a copy of a copy of a copy, and the voiceover is aimed at some unseen listener who's implied to be yet another duplicate. Most time travel films hand you a clean diagram. Primer hands you a puzzle and walks out of the room. Even people who've watched it a dozen times can't agree on who ends the movie where. Carruth built that confusion on purpose, refusing to include a single shot that confirms which Aaron survives. So the real twist is that the movie itself will never tell you the truth. Kenneth really time traveled. In Safety Not Guaranteed, a magazine intern answers a bizarre classified ad. Someone looking for a partner for time travel. Safety not guaranteed. Fully expecting to expose a delusional man, and the machine actually works. Aubrey Plaza plays the writer sent to investigate Kenneth, played by Mark Duplass, who really did post that ad. For 90 minutes, director Colin Trevorrow plays it coy, daring you to assume Kenneth is paranoid, lonely, or just lying. The machine works. In the final scene, his homemade contraption hums to life, and the two of them vanish into the past together. Trevorrow revealed in 2020 that he changed that ending at the last minute, because originally it was never going to work at all. He later said making it real might have changed the trajectory of my career. So the ambiguity fans argued about for years came down to a decision he almost made the other way. K has always been family. The reason Agent K is such a closed-off, humorless partner comes down to a secret buried in 1969, and Men in Black 3 finally digs it up. A villain called Boris the Animal breaks out of a lunar prison and travels back to 1969 to murder a young K before K can arrest him and deploy a planetary defense shield called the ArcNet. Agent J chases Boris into the past to stop him and protect the younger K, played by Josh Brolin. At the launch site at Cape Canaveral, an army colonel walks over to thank K for saving the planet, and the colonel's small son is standing quietly at his side. The boy is J. Moments later, Boris kills the colonel right in front of the child. The younger K wipes the boy's memory with a neuralizer and silently takes on the job of watching over him, becoming the father figure J never knew he had. It quietly rewrites the whole franchise, because K has been carrying that secret since J was a kid. J spends the entire film thinking he traveled back to save his partner's life, and learns instead that his partner has been saving his since the day his own father died. The machine bends time. In the Netflix thriller Ark, an engineer wakes at 6:16 in the morning to masked intruders smashing through his bedroom door, gets killed, and wakes up right back where he started. And the reset isn't fate or magic. The machine did it. Renton lives in a collapsed near future where rival factions are at war over a device called the Ark, built to generate limitless power. And it hums away in his own basement. A short circuit folds time into a loop lasting 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 15 seconds. Here's the catch. One of the intruders already knows about the loop and is steering events on purpose to keep it running. As the cycles pile up, more people start holding on to their memories from one reset to the next, and the balance of power shifts every single time. The final loop ends with Renton adding 2 small words to his warning video. Trust Hannah, the first real proof that this loop can actually be changed. One transfusion strips his power. The soldier who has died and reset the same day hundreds of times finally loses his one advantage at the worst possible moment. And Edge of Tomorrow builds its whole climax around that loss. Tom Cruise plays Major Cage, who gains the power to reset the day after he's soaked in the blood of a powerful alien called an Alpha. The ability lives in that alien blood, running through his system. Emily Blunt's Rita Vertasky warns him that she once had the exact same gift and lost it for good after taking a battlefield blood transfusion. Late in the film, that's precisely what happens to him. Cage is badly wounded, given a transfusion while he's unconscious, and just like that, his link to the loop is severed. Now the final assault is a genuine one-way mission. No resets, no second chances. He and Rita go anyway. After destroying the alien hive mind called the Omega, Cage is bathed in its blood as he dies, which hands him the power one final time and resets the day to before the invasion ever began. As of a report in September of 2025, director Doug Liman is eyeing a late 2026 shoot for a long-delayed sequel with Cruise and Blunt both set to return, the follow-up the studio has wanted for well over a decade. The drug is a doorway. A designer party drug sweeping New Orleans in Synchronic isn't getting anyone high, it's physically dropping them 7 minutes into the past, and some of them never come back. The pill scrambles the pineal gland's grip on time and sends the user's body into an earlier era while they stay standing in the exact same spot. That's what makes it lethal. If the building around you didn't exist yet, you fall out of open air, which is how one early user dies. Only people with a non-calcified pineal gland travel cleanly, and paramedic Steve, played by Anthony Mackie, qualifies because a brain tumor left his gland underdeveloped. He starts mapping out carefully timed trips to pull a missing girl named Brianna back out of the past. Steve does bring her home. But the same tumor that opened the door for him is the thing that's slowly killing him, so the broken biology that let him travel is exactly what shuts the door for good. Minutes inside are centuries outside. A group of students climb into a cave to rescue their missing professor in Time Trap, spend what feels like a single afternoon underground, and come back out to find that thousands of years have already rolled by. The professor vanished, chasing a legend that the cave was a fountain of youth, and his students went in after him. What they don't grasp at first is that time inside the cave runs dramatically slower than time on the surface, and the deeper they go, the wider that gap yawns open. A few minutes of scrambling around down there can equal years up above, then whole centuries. The clues stack up slowly. They find hippies who wandered in decades earlier, still young, still alive. Then they find a caveman and his family. Everyone entered at a completely different point in history, but inside the cave they're all living the same endless now. Slowly, it dawns on the students that the people they passed on the surface only hours ago have already grown old and died up there. The cause is the cave water itself, droplets that halt aging, the literal fountain the professor was hunting. By the time the movie reaches its climax, so much time has burned away outside that far future humans show up in a spacecraft. They use technology thousands of years ahead of ours, along with the cave's healing water, to revive the dead. The professor, the students' fallen friends, all of them. The rescue the kids kept praying for never comes from their own era. Help only arrives once humanity has advanced far enough to raise the dead, because up on the surface, tens of thousands of years have gone by. His wife runs the experiment. A burned-out Special Forces vet in boss level wakes up to a squad of assassins every single morning, dies, and starts the exact same day over. And the person who trapped him in the loop is his own estranged wife. She built it. Frank Grillo plays Roy Pulver, who gets killed within hours no matter what he tries. The loop is generated by a device called the Osiris Spindle, built by the research company Roy's wife Gemma works for. She's the one who placed him inside it, and not to torture him, but to hide him and their young son from her employer, a dangerous man named Ventor. To break out, Roy has to survive a full day and reach the core of the spindle. He ends the loop by stepping into that core willingly, accepting that even if it erases him completely, his sacrifice is the only thing that finally lets his wife and son live a day that doesn't reset. The recruiter is his daughter. A middle-aged high school science teacher gets drafted to fight aliens 30 years in the future in the Tomorrow War, and the hardened officer who recruits and commands him turns out to be his own grown daughter. Humanity opens a bridge through time to pull present-day civilians forward into a losing war against creatures called the White Spikes. Chris Pratt plays Dan Forrester, yanked into 2051, where he meets Colonel Murray Forrester, the scientist running the entire operation. Then the floor drops out. Murray is his daughter, all grown up, still just a little girl back in his own time. She hands him a toxin engineered to wipe out the aliens and sends it back to the present along with him. But the film has a second twist waiting. The White Spikes didn't come from the future at all. They crash-landed on Earth centuries ago and sat frozen in the Russian ice until it finally thawed around 2048. A trace of volcanic ash on one of their claws points Dan and his own father toward the buried alien ship in present-day Russia. Dan wins by destroying them in his own time, which erases the future war completely. So the grown daughter who trained him will now get to grow up in a world where none of that nightmare ever happens. His best friend lived backward. The easygoing operative who has the hero's back through all of Tenet has actually known him for years, from the hero's own future, and he's been living their entire friendship in reverse. Christopher Nolan's film runs on a mechanic called inversion, where objects and people have their entropy flipped so they move backward through time while everyone else moves forward. The lead, known only as the protagonist, gets recruited into a secret organization called Tenet to stop a faction in the future from inverting the entropy of the whole world. His closest ally on that mission is Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, relaxed, loyal, and always somehow one step ahead. Here's the part that reframes everything. Neil wasn't recruited alongside the protagonist. He was recruited by the protagonist, years from now, in a future the protagonist hasn't reached yet. So Neil already shares a deep history with a man who has only just met him, and because of inversion, he's experienced most of that friendship in the opposite order. Their final mission together is, from Neil's side, close to the beginning. In the climax, Neil inverts back into a tunnel to take a bullet meant for the protagonist, saving his life, then simply walks away toward the death waiting for him. He knows what's coming. The protagonist also realizes he himself is the founder and future leader of Tenet, quietly orchestrating his own recruitment from years ahead. Neil calls it the end of a beautiful friendship, an ending for the protagonist, but for Neil, much closer to where it all began. Watch it a second time, and every casual thing Neil says means something else, because he already knew how it ended, and he showed up anyway. If this was your kind of video, consider subscribing so you don't miss whatever comes next. Thanks for watching.